Um, this is kind of a core slide. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have seen it along the way before. And I start here because we don't often think about it, but college counseling is one of the most impactful learning experiences your kids will have in high school. And it gets at a lot of the core um, traits and habits that we're trying to develop in the kids. So uh, often we think about it just as a process, but we make a mistake if we underemphasize how important a piece it is. And one of the biggest impressions it will leave of going through that process himself. It is truly an immersive learning experience for the next 12 months. Um, and so I just start there, Kelly. We can jump to the next, uh, I think. I can't do that, I don't think. You can go ahead and click all those in. Or if before we're actually, Kelly, if I don't know whether we can try and do this on the webinar or not, but if you all in the audience were to suggest what what are some of the major changes that are going to affect your son or daughter's search process over the 9 months and things that are fundamentally different than they were several years ago? Can you point to any of them? Demographic cliff is one example, but what other things are rapidly changing the college landscape and make it such a different process than it was just a couple of years ago? Does anybody want to jump in on that? No volunteers? Do I have to start calling on people? We'll end up talking about lots of them. I'm just gonna glaze reemergence of testing. Peter, thanks. That's exactly right. We're playing a yo-yo with testing, and Kelly and her team will get more into that. But we're playing there are differing norms, changing norms on testing, on early admission um, uh, and early decision. There are someone that just put in AI has had a huge impact. I didn't see what the others that popped up. The institutions themselves are changing, partially as a reaction to the demographic cliff, um, more different options and expectations. Uh, this has been a growing trend since the advent of the Common App, but many more applications. Kids today are often putting in 10 to 20 apps when they might have put in 3 to 4 apps 20 years ago. Um, Emily noted that kids are looking outside, employment challenges after college. So lots of things. I think that the big six, Kelly, if you want to try and drop them, and some of the stuff that we'll be talking about in the coming weeks and months, um, the demographic cliff, fundamental changes in the demographic in this country, including a rapid decline in high school graduates over the next 15 years, and that will be even more pronounced in certain markets like the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, where over the next 10 to 15 years, the number of actual high school graduates each year could shrink by as much as 20% in that time period. That has a profound impact on the colleges. And you combine that with, as someone just said, um, kind of the the superficial impact of more applications, but fewer actual applicants and qualified apps. As a group, the rapid growth in colleges and applications was really funded by two things. This country took on a huge amount, the people of this country took on a huge amount of debt to fund college for about 2 decades. A crushing amount of debt that a lot of young people are left with today. And there was a huge number of international students subsidizing a lot of our large domestic universities with international tuition dollars. The outlook on both taking on lots of debt and the availability of those undergrad international dollars has changed dramatically. Um, Technology is changing everything, and AI has had a profound impact. It's led some schools to say as much as we're not even looking at the essays anymore, but you have to count on Kelly and her team to know which ones are pulling those punches and which aren't. Um, but um, and it's changing the options that are available and the careers that are or the career tracks and major tracks that are most popular. All this is changing the institutions. It seems like every week you can read about a major college or university that is revamping its programs, cutting programs, introducing new programs, consolidating. We've had in this region a number of schools that have been thought to be in pretty good shape, and then they've all of a sudden been on very weak footing and have had to dramatically reposition, or they've merged, but often it's the kids that are left holding the bag, and we don't want that for any of our kids in junior year, when those colleges have to shut down. Geopolitical shifts, I referenced the changing demographics or changing pools of international applicants. And we already talked about the flip-flopping on both test strategies and early admission, early decision, and Kelly and her team will have a lot to say about that. So all those things are things that have had their biggest impact, certainly post-COVID. And we lose track of this, but we're only 3 years into AI, for instance, into popularized kind of true public access to large language models and chat GPT and the like. That was the fall of 2022. So it's amazing how far and how much the landscape has changed, how quickly. Kelly, you want to add any comments to that right now?
I think that, like you said, so much has changed so quickly, and I feel like every week, we're getting news on higher ed, and it's something new and different to incorporate. So we're going to definitely try to keep the families updated, the students updated, and our process updated to reflect those changes.
Um, Good news is there's lots of opportunity for learning on our end, perpetual and constant. I'm going to get you to, I think we can skip the next slide and go um, right to some of the choices. We talked through that already. We'll spend a lot of time. I didn't talk right then about ROI, but one of the things is during the course of this journey, um, most families will want to think very hard about the ROI and how much are we really, really, really willing to commit to this? How much debt, if any, should we be willing to take on, and how should that drive our options? But before we get there, we wanted to do we're going to do a couple little pop-up quizzes to kind of kick us into this flow, this process. And I'd like people to think about and jot down on a piece of paper and try and keep these notes if you can. And I only say this half jokingly. If you're on this call with your partner or colleague, it can be a great idea to do this individually, because sometimes it's helpful to do that. But if you had to identify what has been most important for your student to be successful at Landmark, what aspects of the education here, or the style of education, the courses taken, whatever, what has helped them be most successful? Take 30 seconds and think about that. We can go ahead and if people are willing to, you can throw you can throw your ideas into the notes. And if you have stuff you don't want to share, that's also important. Or if you want to save it to talk about directly with your college counselor, that's great too. But we should be thinking about these things. So we've got structure. Okay, I'm gonna get you to slide back just a sec if I could. We have structure. A lot of people talk about personalization. You see it there, academic support from Pete Horsch. Um, range of opportunity and programs, and community. When people say community, think about what characterizes community. I think usually it's about intimacy, access to teacher, relationships with peers, um, and those kind of things. So as we get to, so Kelly, we can jump to the second question. Yeah, everything we do to try and grow academic confidence. Thank you, Julie. Um, so as you think back on what was important at Landmark, I encourage you to think in the same way, and this is a little bit harder. What are the top two or three priorities as you think about the best college match for your child? And quite often people will start to talk about, we want a big school, or we want an urban school, or we want a NESCAC school, a small private college. But think about it in the same way you think about the attributes that served your child well at Landmark. I encourage you to think about, um, I encourage you to think about how that might inform what you're looking for at college. So, Julie, is supporting the highest possibility for success for the college as well?
Yes.
Thanks. Seen and not lost. Pivot majors that interest him if he changes his mind, that ability to find something else. Yours truly had 8 majors in 5 years of college. I might say something about my attention span. Any questions or comments about some of the ideas that you came up with on this side? Um, okay, keep those notes. We're gonna keep going. Now we're gonna ask you to choose between two options. If you had to, and just keep note of these as well. We'll go through them pretty quickly. If you had to choose between brand reputation versus support and engagement, which would you prioritize? Troy was quick to pull on that support and engagement. Um, we're seeing a lot more Bs, um, but research shows that quite often A is the driver for most families until they really think about it. You want to jump to the next one? Hard to ignore A with the ROI math, but B. And we'll hopefully be able to provide some perspective on that, that you don't have to ignore one for the other, but it's important that you know going in. Size or location or support and engagement. My oldest was A. I hope that A worked out. A couple people picking A. That must be, I hope that's confidence that we've done our job here and that you're confident that they'll be successful anywhere. And as I said, a lot of times you don't choose. There are a lot of large schools, if you really do your homework, that have remarkable support opportunities. And Kelly will talk quite a bit about that. Location and support. Um, I like that. You want to go jump to the next one, Kelly? This is one that's taking an increasing part of people's conversation and thinking. Um, um, if I can get an exceptional education that's going to serve my child well for 50% of what I can get a very similar education with very similar outcomes with A, can you justify spending twice the money for the brand if that's what it costs? Um, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But keep these notes for yourself, and I think we have one more in this vein. Is that right, Kelly? Or maybe two more? This is very similar. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Um, the next one's a little bit harder. The surprising thing about this is often if you go into it as a very conscientious shopper, often you don't have to compromise one for the other. But you need to be super intentional right from the get out. Um, so um, you're going to see, oh, let's see, I'm going to do that. I'm going to jump back. If you really, if hopefully it would be very helpful if you take all four of those, um, kind of brand and prestige as one, support and engagement as one, value and cost as one, and size or location as one, and you try and rank order the four of them just on your own time, that can be a really important a really important opportunity. Um, the other thing that I'm going to encourage you and associated with that is to rank order them, but also and there's been a lot written by this, and we're going to share something for you guys to think about. There's been a lot written about the importance of having those discussions and saying, this is what our budget is. This is what we can practically afford. And we know we want to put some things on there with expectations that we'll be able to get lots of support. But net, at the end of the day, this is what we can do. And we don't want to put ourselves in a bind because we can't. We hear over and over from families that they're willing to pay more the first year with hopes that they'll qualify for more financial aid in the second and third year. We've also seen dash dreams when colleges haven't met those needs. You may get a small increase in aid and grants the second year, but they try and put their best number forward right up front. And um, and Kelly, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but there'll be lots of talk about affordability, I think, in general in the coming weeks. Um, but so that's an important thing that is shaping things. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave you with this book. We had some copies. I don't know if we have any more copies of it on hand. I've listened to it several times. Uh, if you have a limited attention span, I would suggest starting at about chapter 6. I found the first 3 or 4 chapters not as valuable, but I found the last half of the book very valuable. There's a lot written about this, but this guy, Slingo, who's been writing about this sector for 20 years now, has some great perspective. This is a brand new book. I believe I think it was released October or November. He looks at the very current dynamics. There's some real practical experience about there that gets to some of those value questions we were just asking about, that we were getting you to think about. And I'd be happy to sit down or have further individual conversations or group conversations about portions of the book. Um, um, and and I just hope it's helpful. There's a whole lot of stuff out there, but I believe that this is one of the very best in this moment. Oh, there it says it was available last September, so I'm a little bit off on that, but it's still very contemporary, and and he's got some really good advice about the changing face of colleges, and the things that are driving our behavior as college consumers. So that's what I have. Please feel free to email or call me or stop in. I'm happy to discuss any of this with you further. But Kelly, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, if that makes sense. And then if there's time, I'll hang around for questions at the end as well. Kelly, do you want to jump in or you're on mute?
Sorry, I'm multitasking here tonight, trying to get the next slides ready to go. So I just need 1 second to do that. How's that? Do we see another slideshow?
We do.
You do. Awesome. Well, we didn't really properly introduce ourselves, but I'm Kelly Scimone. I'm the Director of College Counseling. We call it College and Career Counseling at Landmark because we do consider the whole post-secondary planning cycle and consider many different options for our students. The majority of them do go on to four-year schools, but those of you whose students are thinking about anything from trade school to gap year to employment to the military, we can also help them. We just say that nobody leaves Landmark without a plan, so everything's highly individualized, and we're looking forward to working with all of you. So our team tonight, there's myself, Josh Melanson, who's been with the team a couple of years. He's on in the background tonight because he's also doing double duty covering one of the dorms as well. Kevin Roberts, who's been with us for several years and has been a dorm parent house, house parent for many years, as well as a teacher of literature. And our most recent addition is Miss Rachel Casola. She is absolutely amazing as a teacher, program organizer. She runs I think it's called the Skills Plus program in the summer. Was one of our academic advisors, and we're really happy to have her on our team. So you'll hear a little bit from each of them tonight. One point I want to make is that our students just go everywhere. This is just a very light sampling of some schools. This is taken from our webpage. If you happen to go onto the webpage, there is a very extensive list of all of the schools that students have attended since, I think it's 2022. So it's a pretty extensive list. I encourage everybody to check out our webpage there. So some of the options that students consider, as I said, mostly four-year colleges, but in our meetings with the students, as those have started already, meetings with juniors, we explain these options and we don't hold anybody to their first choice. So, in other words, a lot of kids will come in and say, I really want to do a four-year college or I want to pursue a trade. We keep the conversations open as we're researching different avenues because we've had many kids who have changed their minds the beginning of senior year, sometimes midway through senior year. So we do like to give everybody information on a variety of options because you never know when the student may decide to pivot, and it's just good for them to understand that four-year college isn't the only option, but it is an option that is open for everyone should they decide to take that route. So our post-secondary planning process is highly individualized. And as John opened the meeting, he mentioned that this is one of the biggest educational experiences they're going to have in their career so far in education. We really try to put the student in the driver's seat of this process and encourage them to work on their self-advocacy skills along with their college applications. So while we're there to support them through every line of the Common App, we also are going to encourage them to be the ones to reach out and call an admissions director with a question rather than doing that for them. So it's kind of a balancing act. As I said, right now we've started our individual one-on-one meetings with juniors, and we're just enjoying this class so much. So far, they've just been great, and we're really excited for the next year. We do coordinate with their teachers in terms of scheduling the meetings, as well as, maybe getting some background information on certain students and their interests. We have a variety of workshops that will present based on student interest and our needs. For example, later in the spring, we will run an essay writing workshop for all students so that they can really understand the purpose of the essay and sort of the expectations. And then we will work on that with them so that they leave for summer vacation with a rough draft of their essay in hand. Takes a little bit of the stress out of the summer. And of course, we do have many on-campus visits with admissions reps. We have been really lucky to have a great relationship with many of the local colleges and frequently have visitors on campus to meet with students. And again, sometimes student interest drives that. So, for example, I'm after meeting with several juniors, trying to pull together a workshop featuring healthcare careers because many of the students have said, I want to work in healthcare, but I don't want to be cutting people open. And what are some of the options? So that's just a way that we kind of pivot and set up programming based on demand. Okay, academic support, not the most important, not the only important, but a very important part of our student search. And Kevin is going to talk about that for us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Roberts. As Kelly introduced me, I would also like to share that I am also the dad of a junior. So I'm in this right alongside you guys. If you feel like you're behind, um, no, I will unabashedly say that my junior has not been on a single college tour yet. You're not behind. It's a good time to start. I'm trying to start with him, but he reminds me that every junior's timing is a little different. There's not a set plan as we individualize everything. So academic support at colleges and universities, we can basically break it down into three different categories. Um, One is the most support. I'll start there. The most support comes with schools that have um, learning disability support programs. Those are comprehensive programs. They're usually fee-based, unless it's Westfield State. That is a free one that has a full LD comprehensive support program. Um, those come with an advisor or a coach that is individually assigned to your student and will meet with them couple times a week, one-on-one check-in. That might be executive function coaching. That might be, time structuring and management and that kind of stuff. Um, but and if a school has that, that kind of indicates the kind of ethos of the school. So maybe that your student doesn't need the program, but you can recognize, hey, the program is there, which does kind of inform that culture. Um, Second, in the second tier there is supportive programs, services. They might be offered for workshops of executive function coaching. There might be um, um, I'm gonna back up because I want to say every school has a disability support office, student support office, however you want to call it, accommodations office. There's a couple different names assigned to those. So every school will have those. It's that extra layer of services that's in the middle ground that um, that can connect them with a counselor, can connect them with a coach. That will add just a little bit more layer of support. Um, and then really on that baseline is the basic accommodations office, which um, they all have access to. It really is kind of defining what that culture is and how well they're going to meet those needs of the accommodations that they're given. Um, to get accommodations, you need documentation. Um, so we are looking for, schools are looking for psychoeducational testing that is updated, um, that needs to be no less than 3 years old. That should be on the adult scale. So once your student passes 16 and a half, your tester will administer um, the WACE, which is the Wessler Adult Scale. And then that is good on that adult level. For the most part, we'll get them through their college experience. For the most part, it's good for the rest of their life. There could be a need for that to be updated. Um, you should schedule that now if you know your testing is outdated or will be outdated soon. Um, for most of you, we don't really need that testing until we apply for accommodations in spring of their senior year. However, if your student is looking at one of the LD support programs, um, some of those require us to apply with their testing in the fall of their senior year to get into that LD support program. Um, Schools like Marist and American and um, Curry all ask for that testing up front. And there are a few others. So it's best practice to get that done as long as they're past 16 and a half, and you will be in good shape. Questions about any of that? And before I really say questions about any of that, I don't really want questions on any of that. There are going to be questions like individualized that you will have. Please talk to your counselor because there's always some variability on that. Um, Moving on to standardized tests, we talked about there is some fluctuation of standardized tests. Some schools are going back to looking at testing. Um, However, there are an enormous amount of schools that could be a great fit for your student who are still test optional. Um, we do offer both the ACT and the SAT. The ACT we are giving next month. They would have had to already register for that. Um, and we are registering, we will register students for the SAT coming up in April. And we'll check on, we'll have conversations with each of your student about whether or not that is a good route for them, and if they want to do that. Some students just take it because it's kind of considered like a rite of passage of what you're supposed to do graduating high school. However, we don't push students that they all should. Um, there's many reasons not to take them at all. If I could predict with my older student of who graduated last year, I knew exactly how he was going to test, and I knew what that was going to be like, and I put the decision to him. Um, we are not a school that says everybody should test. And again, there's a lot of individual conversations about that, and we're happy to have those with you or your student. But by and large, our students do not submit their test scores. Um, really, that's probably 97, 98% do not submit their test scores. Um, so,
Really only about a handful of seniors every year. And we're seeing the schools that are asking for test scores now tend to be the Ivy League and a couple of the big Southern schools. So it's clearly not all the schools by any means. And we've had a couple questions come in the chat, and I think we're going to go through our content and then circle back to the questions. I think John's kind of organizing the questions. It looks like he is. If not, we'll go back and visit them because I wanted to get some of the content out first. Kevin, anything else you want to say about that, or should we pivot to
no, I
Rachel?
think that's great. We can move on.
Okay, so Rachel's going to talk about the applications themselves and sort of what the different admissions plans options are.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, I'm Rachel Casola. I'm one of the counselors. So we use the Common App, which some of you may be familiar with if you have other children who have gone through this, but that's the platform that we use for most applications. The majority of them are on the Common App. One thing that's nice about the Common App is that things save on there. So when students put in their information or answer questions, personal info, most of that all saves. The other thing we do with the students when they go through the Common App is we go through line by line with them. So we make sure we read through everything, we triple, double check everything before they hit submit on anything. We also create what's called a password manager. So it's a Google Doc that kind of tracks passwords and usernames. That way, in case they create a Common App in June and they forget what their password is in September, we have that document, or in case I need to log in and help a student. So that's primarily what we use for applications. Some schools, Endicott doesn't use the Common App. They have their own application. So again, we walk through this step by step with each student, each application. There's a few different admissions plans, and some of you may be familiar with this, but there's early decision, which is binding. So if a student chooses to ED or early decide somewhere, that they are locked in, that if they get accepted, they have to go there. We tend to discourage that in our office just because it really limits them from one place. And I was saying in the last meeting on Friday that like I had a student come in and she was like, I think I might want to ED to this school. And she's like, but I haven't visited yet. And I was like, well, let's maybe just regular decision then. So that's binding. Early action is what we really strive for in our office. That those due dates are just earlier. So October 15th, November 1st, November 15th. It's non-binding, so it's really just getting the process done a little bit sooner, which tends to ease the anxiety. So that's kind of our goal, is to try to get a few applications out there for early action. And it's really just the process is earlier. The third missions plan is the regular, the rolling. So these application deadlines are typically in January or February. Sometimes students that are applying to an architecture program or an art major or portfolio, they might wait and do the regular decision. Another reason why students may do regular decision is if they want to really get those first trimester senior year grades to help their GPA. So those are kind of the different admissions plans. And then again, if they want to apply to a program within a school, like the PAL program at Curry, we'll help them walk through that with them as well. Same goes with interviews and supplemental essays. We really, it's kind of a theme here, but we really individualize everything and go through it step by step with each student. So that's kind of our application process.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the whole financial aid piece and how we pay for it. John talked a little bit about return on investment, and I know families are really starting to consider the value for the education they're paying for. I think it's important to know that the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, is available for anyone to fill out. Colleges generally say even if you think you won't qualify for aid, but you think you might want some, you could go ahead and fill out the FAFSA. And that's something that you usually do in the fall of the year that your student's applying, according to deadlines, which are pretty similar to the deadlines that a student would use for applying for colleges. So, for example, if the student is applying for a November 15th early action deadline, then their financial aid forms are going to be due around the same time period. I think the important thing to know here is that you can fill this out using your tax forms from the prior year. So there's not really an excuse not to fill it out if you feel like you need it. So the FAFSA helps determine need-based aid. Merit-based aid is based on the student's particular qualifications, interests, so it may be GPA, but it could be a special talent or skill that the school is looking for. So it's one of those things that colleges use to kind of entice you to attend. We're seeing some great merit aid being doled out to our seniors this year, and I think that trend will continue as colleges are trying to attract students to their schools. Often parents ask about scholarships, and really these merit-based scholarships are going to be your biggest source of dollars to put towards these tuition bills. The scholarships that Landmark gives out at the end of the year and that some of the various local groups, those are book money, really. So we do encourage families and students to make their list well-rounded, not only in terms of, the academic rigor, but also in terms of what the costs might be for a school. So that's something that you should discuss with your guidance counselor for sure, your college counselor. I'm happy to take questions about that later.
I jump in a little bit on
Yeah,
that?
of course.
On Friday night, we had more time, but I did ask the question because Kelly talked about how important merit aid has become and how differentiating it is and how important you be kind of very strategic on figuring out how to access it. Does anybody know have a guess as what the average discount was for entering freshmen for the 2020 fall of 2025 at private colleges and private four-year colleges and universities? Does anybody have a guess as to what the average discount or merit age package is running? I don't see anybody jumping in. So Brian put a number, hard dollars, $20,000. Someone else put $12,000 and someone else put $20,000 in. It depends, but the average discount at private four-year colleges and universities was 56%, over 56% of tuition for the fall of 2025. The highest it's ever been, obviously. Um, uh, it's just very important that we all understand that, and it all fits into that affordability discussion. So, Peter, you were up there at 40%, but it's even higher than that. And it's hard to believe the average family's paying less than 50% of full boat at private institutions this coming fall. It's super important that we factor that in and that you work with your counselors to understand where those opportunities are going to be. Because we hear all kinds of wonderful success stories. Yeah. Uh, Someone was just noting that, often these things take the shape of a total discount over 4 years. They'll say,
Mhm.
we're giving you $100,000 over the next 4 years, 20, which is 25,000 bucks a year, unless you're like me. But they expect you to use it in 4 years. Um, uh, you know, uh, so it's just a super important part of the discussion today, and can be navigated to your advantage with some careful thinking. Sorry.
No, thank you so much. If Josh is available, he is going to just give us a quick talk about who does what in the office and among the families and students. And if not, I'm happy to keep on talking.
Nope.
Josh, are you available? Oh,
Yeah, can
yeah.
you hear me okay? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're doing okay now at this point. Everybody's settled down as it relates to, it's job time here in Porter. So welcome everybody. Thank you for being a part of tonight. And as Kelly said, we're really enjoying meeting this junior class, working with them, individually, trying to get an idea as to, what the student is essentially working on as we look at the lovely display that you see. At this point, we're having a very informal meeting with them, just trying to get to know them, get an understanding of who they are, and then from there, trying to create filters as they will, these parameters being set as to deciding the school list based off of those parameters that they're talking to us about. Um, Another thing that our students are doing while focusing on the preliminary list or whatever that list ends up coming to be based off of what they want to do after their next, career after a landmark. We're keeping track of deadlines. They're keeping track of deadlines. They're creating graphic organizers and they're, creating a system in place for themselves to make sure that they're staying true to what they need to get done and turned in. They will be writing the college essay. The expectation that we always set for our students in the office is to have a solid rough draft of their essay going into the summer of their senior year. And then when they return in the fall, we're going to really work hard to produce that and make it look, beautiful and ready to be turned over and put on the Common App as such, or, wherever it needs to go to make sure that's in final draft form. Outside of that, they're requesting recommendations, which we very much help them, talk through that as to who they should be thinking about asking. We try to relate it to what the career is they're thinking about maybe majoring in, maybe even minoring in, but we'll and even just like best person to ask based off of experience with those teachers, mentors, staff, you name it. We'll really work with students on that, but it's their job to ultimately ask them, as we do always say in person. Make sure you go to the person, ask the person, and be thankful, shake their hands, be happy that they're willing to write that for you. And then they're completing the applications through and through and asking questions along the way. As we jump over to family, same thing. Setting parameters is important for you and I and our office. So whatever you can do to be transparent, we welcome it, as we hope to do the same to you as well. Parameters are important as we all navigate this. It does take a village. So completing the FAFSA is also important. We're happy to talk about that at any point if you have any questions on that. The big one on this, I truly feel like, is the college tours, getting out there, exploring, going to schools, giving students the opportunity and chance, if you can, of course, to see any school for that matter, to give them perspective. It's very important for our students to have perspective and see what's considered a big school, small school, asking the questions of what type of support you have, seeing the campus life, the community, any things that they can basically take from that is important, and it makes conversations easier for both, once again, you and us in the office to talk through that as we navigate this process with them, deciding what the school is or their next endeavor is going to be. Scheduling updated testing, as Kevin put perfectly. It's now time to think about that. But if you have any further questions on that, we're happy to answer that on an individual basis. And also doing the same, asking questions. We're open book here in the office, and we love to answer questions. So keep them firing at us, the whole team that's here tonight. We have your back. And then lastly, what we do on our end is we're making sure that we're supporting the students through the whole process, but also backing out and out of their way enough to be an individual in this process, to put a lot of this on them to really guide throughout this whole process, showing them that they're supposed to make some calls here and there to admissions department, start to come to our office to meet with reps. Once again, taking that independence over and doing that themselves. We're also creating graphic organizers of ourselves. We're tracking everything. We're doing research with the students. We're showing them how to do research and take data on, how to look up an actual major from a college, how to look through an actual syllabus, how to look through actual curriculum that they might be focusing on. And then we're setting up trackers for them to make sure that they're checking all the boxes. We're reviewing the essays, we're reviewing the recommendations, and we're sending out credentials across the board for whoever needs these credentials to make ultimate decisions that come later on. I know we do a lot. We do a lot more than that, but once again, we will be as transparent as we possibly can to update you as we navigate the process as to what we've been doing with your students. And I'm
That was
happy
a
to answer
lot.
questions at the end. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I know we're starting to get a little bit short on time, so I'm going to kind of quickly reference these timelines and just know that this will be sent out and made available to you. You can see that we're working with the juniors in terms of small group meetings already. We'll be meeting with them every 2 to 3 weeks between now and the end of the school year. We also have coming up our career day. I know there was a question a parent asked about whether we do any types of interest inventories and how we help students determine what careers they might be interested in. And we do have a variety of things that we do in terms of assessments, but we also put on a career day where they get a chance to meet in small groups with Landmark alumni and other professionals in their area of interest to talk about the opportunities for those careers. And like I said, we'll make these available to you. I'm just going to kind of quickly click through. Senior year, we're meeting just about every week with students, especially as we push toward those November 1st, November 15th deadlines. We really do go over every Common App question line by line. So they are getting like what I like to call now concierge level service. We are making sure things get done. The students obviously take the bulk of the responsibility, but we're making sure deadlines are met and so forth. All right, I'm going to flip through this quickly. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, if you look down toward April for the senior year, the students aren't really finished with us till they cross the stage and receive their diplomas. The second half of senior year, we're working with them to help them request academic accommodations at the college of their choice. So another really important thing that we do at Landmark to support them in their transition process. Communicating with us, obviously, we're happy to talk to you at any point about anything. I'd much rather you reach out to us to the point where you feel like you're being a pest than be stressed about something. It's just not worth it. If you hear something that sounds, unclear to you on the soccer field, on the soccer field sidelines, just reach out to us. Email, I always say, is best because usually we have students in front of us, so we can't get too specific. But we're happy to set up a time to talk. We do put updates in the weekly parent newsletter, and we ask that you keep an eye on that for updates. We do send individual emails to you, as you know, but that's an important um, website or important newsletter for us in terms of where we put things. And as I said, we have a great web page on the Landmark website.
Kelly, excluding the fair, I know you're about to get to the fair, but excluding the fair, oh, you want to go
There is
back?
no sound over this, so you can talk over it. This is just a video of
How
last year's fair.
many, on a regular basis, and I ask this for the weekly news, how many schools will come visit campus outside of the fair on a
Generally in the
weekly basis?
fall, yeah, in the fall when we have our rep visits we have multiple visits a day, I would say around 50 um, colleges come through to meet with our kids.
So these tend to be different often than the ones at the fair. And I just really, Kelly talked about watching the weekly newsletter. And if there's a reason to check in on that is in the fall, it's especially to understand so you can engage with your kids. Hey, I hear that University of Colorado Boulder is coming through. You should try and go see that. Or whatever. So I encourage you to watch that carefully.
Yeah, and please know that we will do that as well with your seniors. We will go through that list with them at the beginning of the year and make sure they're signed up as much as we can. They need to have permission from their teachers to miss, but um, it's just a wonderful opportunity for our students to get the face and the, name put together for the admissions reps because the people visiting are often the ones making the decisions about your kid's application. I think we're ready for questions. We have a few more minutes. I can go through the chat.
I have them all here. I have
Oh,
most of them
awesome.
here.
Thank you.
So Victor asked, and Victor, jump in and correct me if I characterize this wrong. Are there rankings of schools based on the support levels they offer? And I'm not aware of anything that's a specific ranking. Lily's mom jumped in and said that some people like to use the K and W guide for colleges for student LD.
No.
I got to tell you, I was going to say, I really encourage you to use the gray matter in the college counseling office for that. They're going to be even more up-to-date resources and have individual knowledge of what schools have the various resources available. So there are some third-party books like that that can be helpful, but certainly check with the office to make sure that what you're seeing in those books, just so people know, K&W is published by Princeton Review, and they're trying to sell all kinds of different things.
Right. And we really haven't found any outside resource that's as up to date enough, nor has I guess the intel that we get from our students who have been there and from our own visits to campuses. We're getting out there, visiting schools as much as we can and meeting with the support folks there. What's next,
Um,
John?
so it can be helpful. Troy, Victor, did that address your question? The best rankings you're going to get and the best perspective you're going to get is probably by working directly with this office, if you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
just wondering if there's general consensus on how effective some of these special like coaches and stuff are at some of these colleges.
Yeah,
uh,
I think we get that feedback from our families and students. So I would say, we have actually a whole other webinar talking about support in specific colleges and how that works. So that will be our February webinar, and we'll get more into those details.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Troy, you asked, do you have any feedback on how effective that is? And I missed what we were talking to at that moment.
Oh,
Oh,
she
just
answered
what
the
we were
question.
just talking about.
Okay, same thing. Gotcha. Um, there was a question, and I think Kelly got into this already. There was a question about testing and inventories about student interests. And that's an ongoing discussion as well. And really trying to understand, help them understand what they might be good at. And that extends beyond even college counseling, where they're doing a unit right now, for instance, in their integrated literacy that is getting into a lot of that career exposure and what they might be good at. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I don't because I think we could, again, that's another thing we could just spend a whole other hour on. So
We will
happy
spend
to do that. Exactly.
we'll spend another hour. There was merit availability widely available with question about was merit availability more widely available with EA early action applications. And once again, that's going to differ from college to college right now. And
And
that's another
yes,
one. That's another one you got to be pretty strategic. ED, EA, and implications on merit aid.
and
Um,
as we've seen last year, there were schools that came out with late breaking merit aid to try to sway people at the last minute on their decision making, which is very new, something we hadn't seen in prior years. So
so we literally had
always
families,
changing.
colleges were showing up with $20,000 of extra aid that they didn't provide with the initial acceptance. Um, Not that they're hungry or anything. Um, and I think that Kevin answered that. Um, Uh, Pete was asking about parents from farther away attending college. You know, you shouldn't break your neck too. But and your counselors will work closely with your kids if you before going into it anyway to develop strategies as to how to take advantage, make the best possible impression and the best use of the fair.
Yeah, we absolutely do that. We help them look, look at a map of the fair, figure out what reps to talk to, what questions to ask. And the reps have often commented that our kids are among the best prepared for the fair, of any that they see, and they really enjoy the fair for that purpose. We also have faculty and staff who will work at the fair and support kids who are maybe boarders from faraway lands and, make sure nobody's just left out, not engaging. So no need, you don't have to come, but it's really pretty awesome if you can make it. We'll probably have over 60 colleges and programs represented this year. Josh has done a great job.
And I think that Kevin and Josh both jumped in on this a little bit. Um, as we get closer to spring break, it's a perfect time to start to really get out and walk some college campuses, even on what we call unofficial visits. Um, and just because little Johnny has decided it's a really good idea to go to the University of Hawaii, doesn't mean you got to see the University of Hawaii in these early visits. We really encourage see some big schools, see a local small school. If your student has said I want to go to one of the USCs, whether that be the West Coast or the East Coast USC, South Carolina or Southern California, you don't necessarily have to make that trek this spring, but you could go to UMass Amherst and just say, okay, how do you really feel now that you're on a big school campus? You can get around and you can see some small schools that might not be on the list, but are still worth helping you identify what really resounds, what really feels right, and what doesn't. Kelly, you want to add to that at all?
No, I just actually say that all the time. It's if you're visiting grandma in a faraway state, take advantage. There are colleges everywhere. Or if you happen to be planning a work trip and you can bring your student along, go see colleges in that area. All of their experiences on campus help them to see themselves as a college-going student. So the more times they walk around a college campus, the better they're going to feel about themselves as a future college student.
And Barbara Campbell had probably one of the tougher questions here: how to handle a college who requires high school language. I think she meant a modern foreign language. Um, is there any way around that? And the answer is that a whole lot of schools, there is a way around that. Kelly, you want to expound
Yeah,
on?
we actually send in with our school profile and the kids' applications a foreign language waiver that explains why we do not offer foreign language at our school. And we have not had any pushback from a college. Maybe there was one at some point if any of the other counselors thinks of it, that required the language coming in. There are a handful of colleges that will want the foreign language, I would say, basic familiarity in a college. And for those, we suggest you can take that at a community college. Sometimes they'll have sort of an alternative way, such as a study abroad program, to get that requirement met. So there are ways to work with that. It's not a deal breaker for our kids.
And it's interesting, even at my last school, um, like the UC schools would hit back pretty hard when we had kids who didn't have the foreign language waiver or who didn't have foreign language. And I think these guys have done a great job of building relationships and making sure those colleges understand why our kids don't. And as Kelly said, it hasn't, stood in the way of a lot of opportunities for our kids so far.
I think another one just popped up, but I didn't see what it was. Another
There was
question.
one, there were a couple follow-ups to the foreign language question. I don't
So I
feel,
do just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I do want to make sure everyone knows we'll be having a monthly webinar on different topics toward the end of each month. So we'll start probably next week publicizing the date for February. And there'll be topics that you indicated from the survey that you completed that you'd like to hear more information about. So if you have any other ideas for webinars, we're happy to pull those together. One of the things we'd like to do is bring in some of the college folks, so maybe have some admissions reps on these calls, some of the college support folks as well, to speak with you, because I think that's something that can be pretty enlightening for us.
So Kelly, I have one more question just to reiterate it. Um, um, I'm sitting here, I'm out there with Pete in Boulder tonight, and I'm nervous because our oldest is heading off to school, and I'm not sure heading off to college or starting this process. And when is it okay for me to contact you for a little one-on-one time and to get my feet on the ground with this process as a new parent to the process?
Yeah, actually, right now is a perfect time. We've started having our initial meetings with juniors, so we have a little bit of background, which makes a nice time to kind of touch base with parents. So you're absolutely welcome to shoot us an email and we'll set something up right away. And
And if you have any questions and don't know who your college counselor is, what should you do?
they could reach out to me.
So get right to Kelly. You should know, but if you don't, and your son or daughter should absolutely know who their college counselor is at this point. So make sure that's too. Um,
A couple
uh,
of ACT questions just came in.
yeah,
And Kevin's answering them. Thank you, Kevin, in the chat. So yeah, the ACT is 2 days, 2 mornings. It's paper and off the top of my head, I think it's reading, math, science, and one more the second day, another type of English.
it's a reading writing combo, I think.
And the kids will have that information up front. They're also going to be talking to us about their accommodations for the tests. Anything else? Do we get to all the questions?
So you'll hear from Kelly in the next week or so, setting up the date. You don't know that February date yet, right? That's still floating.
It's toward the end of the month. I just
Okay,
don't remember exactly what date.
great. And we'd love to see you on campus and welcome a visit at any time.